Let's be innovative. Let's challenge a norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
A new beginning, another opportunity to make a statement. Lionheart celebrates its roots with the car that started it all. 18 races to determine who is the best in the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-per-hour Indy cars inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one Lionheart Speedway Series champion whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. The Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing starts now.
The first race of the brand new season brought plenty of roller coaster-like emotions, with several different leaders and several different strategy mix-ups. It led to a wild start to competition for Speedway action in Lionheart. But there is a saying when it comes to a new season: the start of the real campaign is usually race 2. There's also the saying, everything is bigger in Texas. And tonight, we'll see if that comes to be. This is the SimRace247 Texas 200, presented by Gomez Sim Industries. Hello everyone, and welcome to the second race of Season 2 of the Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by Moser Racing, live on RaceSpotTV and ESTV. My name is Justin Prince. Alongside the booth for tonight's action is our Mike Graham partner and Andrew Kinsella, with Arjuna Kakipati in the producer's seat for tonight. I'd like to take the time to remind you that the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. With that, let's dive straight into our graphics esports countdown to green for the second race of the season. And to say the first time out was a wild one is an understatement, Andrew. Plenty of lead changes, plenty of strategy mix-ups, plenty of big cautions which flipped the field upside down several times over. And that was just the start of the year, mind you.
That race really had a little bit of everything, Justin. We had, at the beginning, sort of what was shaping up to be a fuel mileage race with very little caution. Then the caution came out about halfway through, and then cautions breed cautions, and just pure chaos from there. But now we flip the page over to Texas, and it's a case of these drivers having to refocus just 1 week after that chaos that happened at Homestead, Miami, and really refocus themselves. And a number of drivers are going to have to really dig deep and find a way to get through here tonight with a really good finish. Otherwise, they might find themselves in an early hole that will be very difficult for them to get out of.
Especially with the difficult races seen on the Next Level Racing schedule coming up in April. But let's take a look at the graphics esports driver standings, and it was Craig Forsyth who in the end on all of that, Andrew, with the luck of playing some 4D chess, as well as the timing of his pit strategies that seen him lead to the checker flag over Trevor Malone, Dakota DeMade, Gabriel Wood, and Joe Hazard, rounding out the top 5. It was entertaining to say the very least, but Craig had to fight for that one for some points towards the end.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely not an easy win for Craig Forsyth, but it was a deserving one, and he did a great job. Deserving winner, and comes away with the points lead. But look at that top 5 that we have there, Justin. We have 2 rookies in Dakota DeMade and Gabriel Wood, and then 3 wily veterans with Forsyth, Malone, and Hassert. And then you look at the rest of the top 10. So far, the veterans really found a way to get through at Homestead, but there are definitely some fast rookies that are not pictured in this top 10 that we will be looking out for tonight.
And a lot of new teams in that regard, I will say, that are amongst those top driver standings. Let's take a look at the team standings, in fact, brought to you by HyperX. With 4D Sim Racing with picking up the victory, they lead the standings to start off the season. Synergy Motorsports, Power Slide Motorsports also had some consistent scores. How about the team in 4th spot, though? Transcendent Motorsports, that were contenders throughout the night.
Yeah, they were right there throughout the action, but then I think the biggest story was the bad luck that befell Team Raceverse. They're mired down in 5th and 6th, of course. Team Raceverse was competing right to the end for that team championship last year, so it's definitely then looked down to 8th place. Factory-backed Motorsports, your team champions from last year, also had some really bad luck, so the standings right now, I think, are just a little bit topsy-turvy, and we're going to see, I think, some rebound runs here today.
And of course, one of the major talking points when it came to Homestead Miami was the rookie class. Here's a look at the rookie standings after one race presented by Butt Kicker. Dakota DeMade, who came in partway through last season in his first full-time rookie campaign, leads the way for the rookies. Gabriel Wood, Gonzalo Munoz at one point was amongst those fighting hard. Samuel Ryman tried some strategy. There's a lot of good prospects, though, towards the bottom end of the top 10. We should expect to see towards the front based on their experience as a whole in the sim, though.
Absolutely. You look at the likes of Christian Jasper and Andrew Wood, and then not even pictured here on this graphic is Jacob Oster, who we would also expect to be doing much better than he is after one race. But there was a lot of bad luck that happened, especially on that one big one that we saw really ruin the nights of a lot of people. So again, it's just the case of, I think the rookies have it the hardest when it comes to trying to rebound, because they're so anxious to try and make a good first impression, and when that first impression doesn't go, some of these drivers just don't have the experience to really rebound. So it'll be interesting to see, particularly in the rookie class, what happens here today.
That's going to be a true test for some of the drivers who will be the contenders. But let's take a look at the series details presented by GSI, where, keep in mind, custom fixed setups produced by Andrew Kinsella. For tonight's action, and I'll lean towards you in this direction. How has that been so far, trying to build for 2022, for this year's competition, for those fighting for the prizes, but also for the Triple Crown?
Yeah, so definitely the setups. This year, I think we're going a little bit more close together, particularly here at Texas today. Last year we had a bit of a spread out race. Today I think you should expect a little bit more pack racing, a little bit more side-by-side action. You can really use both the low and the high lane here, so it should prove to be some very interesting racing. But yeah, the series details here, cash and prizes, as you mentioned, $6,930 in cash and prizes for the winner. It's going to be a great season, and the Triple Crown, I can't wait to get started, and that's going to start up in just a few weeks at Pocono.
And time can fly when it comes to this type of action, but when it comes to the event details presented by Moser Racing, this is the 6th time the DW12 chassis will be at the Lone Star State in Lionheart sanctioned competition. The pole position has led the most laps and entered HyperX victory lane 3 of those times previously. Just 1 time it's finished under caution, but keep in mind, lead changes could be at a bit of a premium. Just 13, the highest margin. That was back in Season 1. That's a long time ago, Andrew.
Yeah, so one of the things with Texas is it's very difficult to pass that leader because they can get that clean air and really keep to the bottom of the racetrack, but we've seen that it is definitely possible to pass here, particularly back in the pack, but also when you start to get into lap traffic. And we have a very large field here today, so expect lots of traffic and lots of action throughout the field.
Of course, with LSS, that's in reference to last year, but like I said, time flies when it comes to action. Speaking of action, let's take a look at final practice, which is underway, with some drivers trying to sort themselves out here. A little bit of slipping and sliding here at Texas for tonight's action. Keep in mind, this is the legacy version of that, Andrew. This means this is not the reconfigured banking in turns 1 and 2. This is prior to the repave in the late 2010s.
Yeah, no progressive banking, no reconfigured turn 1 and 2, and most importantly, no PJ1 for these drivers to deal with here tonight. So it's definitely a recreation, an accurate recreation of the action that we've seen take place back in the early 2010s. I think of some of the action that we've seen here, like when James Hinchcliffe and Graham Rahal went wheel to wheel on the final lap, and Rahal just pipped Hinchcliffe to the line. There was also, of course, that classic race where Rahal scraped the wall with about 3 to go, and Justin Wilson came by for a win with Dale Coyne Racing. So this track and this car combination has produced some fantastic action.
It's going to be an intriguing night, to say the very least, to see which drivers come away on top tonight and which drivers end up getting squished by some of the giant bugs that can fly around, so I've heard, around Texas. Because, as mentioned, things can get big in this state, especially when it comes to No Limits Texas. But the main thing to keep on thinking about for tonight as well is getting momentum to start off the season right, Andrew, because that's a critical thing if you want to be a champion. You need to be consistent. Last season, when it came to the first running of Speedway Series sanctioned competition, it was the ebbs and flows that helped dictate the storylines. This season, we'll have to see if we'll have those same ebbs and flows, or will we see one driver maintain consistency to try and get the hold of the crown.
Yeah, that consistency has proved so important year after year in Lionheart competition, whether it's been in the Speedway Series, the IndyCar Series, or the Retro Series. The level of competition is just so high, and it just turns out that simply winning races is not the most important thing. You really have to manage your expectations week to week and find a way to dig down deep and turn those bad weeks into mediocre weeks, and that's really what separates the best drivers come the end of the season. Is it just gives it's not necessarily the wins, it's the 8th and 9th place finishes that get somehow magically turned into a 5th place because of the willpower of the driver.
Take a look at Matt Taylor. He's been consistently amongst the front runners in all the Lionheart's competitions over the past year and a half or so. Right now he's in middle of the pack when it comes to qualifying. Again, 2 laps, 5 minutes total, solo qualifying. Is Isaiah Dupree, who has the quickest time so far, a 24.696, and one of the Graphics Esports Logan machines, Gabe Wood, Brendan Carter, AJ Musselman, Taylor round out the top 5. Expect that to flop around a lot, though, because there are plenty of drivers looking to qualify, including this man, who was in contention for a victory, then was involved in a major incident, that big one you referred to.
And of course, Jacob Oster did not have a good qualifying effort at Homestead. He was mired way back in the pack. We watched him drive through the field, then a small problem in a pit stop put him just far enough back into the pack where that big one took him out. So I think if Jacob Oster has his way here today, he's going to qualify much further up in the field, and hopefully that will allow him to stay clear of any big ones that happen.
We'll see how Oster does this time around on the Speedway. 25.9 the first time, the second time a 24.6. Much more improved compared to Homestead in his qualifying positioning with 2 minutes to go up on the board. With plenty of drivers still yet to record a time, keep in mind, right now, 39 drivers are looking to qualify their way in upwards, Andrew, for tonight's action. And a couple of those are drivers looking to make a statement after the rough starts at Miami.
Yeah, there's a number of drivers that are definitely looking for redemption. Oster is one of them. Andrew Wood is another one. He's in he is not actually put in a time yet. Sorry, where is Wood? He's in first place.
How about
there
a
we
better
go.
point with that? He is tied to the 10,000 is what we're being told. How rare is that?
It has literally happened to me once, Justin, is I've tied with, it was actually with my teammate, Brian Carey. We tied to the 10,000th for a pole position, and I set the time first, so I actually got it, and Andrew Wood. Now, Matt Wagner goes to the top of the timesheets, but Andrew Wood and Ron Hacker tied to the 10,000th for second place.
Wagner picking up that top time for now by 16/100ths of a second or so. Craig Forsyth, the race winner, first time out for the season. Where will he end up going this time around? A 25.7 to start. One of the faster first laps so far, Andrew, of the session.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see whether that pays off for him. Some people like to run the really, really high line and take sort of a slow first lap. It looks like Craig tried to keep the momentum up sort of more in the middle of the track, and we'll see if it pays off here at the line. 24.685, so that's 8th for Craig Forsyth right now.
Yes, indeed. So middle of the top 10 grouping, final few moments of qualifying. Many of the drivers not choosing to put in a time, it appears, this week. How will that choice fare out for them? We're about to find out in just a few moments or so for what should be an action-packed night. Of note, one other car has just rolled in by the skin of their chin to the paddock for tonight's action. It's time to take a look at how they'll start from Texas. The drivers making their way onto the starting grid for tonight's action from iRacing's virtual Texas Motor Speedway. On the pole tonight, presented by Butt Kicker, your starting grid, is Michael Goodman for Power Slide Motorsports, a 24.649. 7/1000ths of a second back is Matt Wagner. He'll start in front of Jim Herrick, his best start in his career so far, with Trevor Malone in 4th. Andrew Wood looks to stay out of trouble tonight from 5th position, then 6th goes to Ron Hacker. 7th went to Big Joe Hassert, with Craig Forsyth, the defending race winner on the season, in 8th. Tony Schowen, 9th. Jeff Gion in 10th. Gibson and Oster round out the top 12 tonight, with Dakota DeMade 4/1000ths back in 13th. Dupree started off the session top of the board. He finished in 14th. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, sponsored by the race, sponsored tonight, in 15th. Gabe Wood 16th, with Shane Coogan in 17th. Brendan Carter rounds out the top 18. Joe Branch, AJ Musselman, Paul Jenkins, and Matt Taylor amongst the top 22. Gavin Sanders in 23rd. Gonzalo Munoz finished qualified in 24th position. 25th went to Vern Hawkins III, with Ricky Harden, Kristen Jasper, Matthew Short. Amongst the top 28, the last drivers to take time, James Watson, Ryan Eric King. There are multiple drivers who are expecting end of the longest line penalties amongst this grouping. Dean Mall came in the final moments of qualifying. He'll start, technically 31st on the grid. We'll see where he cycles once the green flag flies. Hugo Gallas, 32nd. Samuel Ryman, George Anzaldo, 33rd, 34th. Charles Teed, Mike Gibson, top 36. The last 4 drivers to make it to the field tonight will be Mike Rigney, Chris Fowler, Gary Gonsell, and Tyler Grau will be in race control for tonight's action. That's a look top to bottom at your running order. Let's take a look at your featured onboard cameras for this evening, starting with the Butt Kicker on board. Sim racing is better with Butt Kicker. visit thebuttkicker.com. With the SimRace247 machine, it is Christian Jaspers 44, SimRace247.com, where sim racing is for everyone. With the Gomez Sim Industries machine, it is Dakota Made, makers of high-end esports equipment and controls. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. And we talked about one driver coming in hot, that was Dean Mall. He has the last of our featured onboard cameras tonight, the HyperX onboard. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. Let's look at your featured onboard cameras for tonight. Each car is equipped with an onboard camera to keep an eye on tonight's action from iRacing's virtual Texas Motor Speedway. 200 miles are up on the docket for tonight, 134 laps from No Limits Texas, the legacy version of it. It becomes the big question, which drivers will take themselves to the front of the field, and which ones will find their way, in the end, the one conquering it? We're about to find out. Michael Goodman in control of the field. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart. And this is the start of the second race of the Speedway Series season. We're underway from Texas. And a good start for Michael Goodman. He'll lead the first time around for 134 circuits. He leads by more than a tenth of a second, and already a choo-choo train forming around the bottom, Andrew.
Yeah, the bottom is definitely where these drivers want to go very early on in this stint, particularly when the tires are good. But Michael Goodman and Matt Wagner actually goes to the lead briefly right now. So they're battling side by side at the front. Wagner gets there, and these two were the early leaders at Homestead as well there, Justin. So a little bit of deja vu with our 1-2 positions right now.
What a stellar start for the season for both of them, but expect as well the defensive line, such as that. Wagner trying to force Goodman all the way up to above the first seam, and that allows Wagner to hold on to the race lead. Of note, a few drivers did receive EOLs as mentioned. Creighton Carter, Samuel Ryman, George Enzotto, Charles Teed, Chris Fowler were those drivers. 2 drivers missed the start entirely. Mike Gibson due to technical issues. Gabe Wood also starting from the pit lane tonight.
And it looks like Gabe Wood is already 1 lap down, so that's very unfortunate start for Gabe Wood.
Yep.
Mike Gibson also a couple laps down.
Trouble.
So, oh no!
This is Carter. Carter has already gotten significant damage. He's spinning onto the racetrack to bring the first caution of this night out. And just like that, we are under yellow, and the battle for 25th was the cause. Gary Godsell got into him, I believe, into turn 3, Andrew.
Yeah, that was just an unfortunate incident. I think it was one of those deals that can happen with really close racing, particularly at the start. It looks like Godso tried to go low, Creighton defended low, and then we saw something like that very similar in the real world. It was a 3-wide situation there, but it's the same sort of effect where you can't make that second move that Carter sort of makes here to really try and squeeze Godso low, and they just wasn't enough room left between the 2 cars, and they make contact, and it's just one of those racing deals.
And already one driver potentially out for the race. Here's a look at Dean Mall. Again, HyperX on board. And you see how calmly he takes it in the slow mode. Not even a real major twitch of things, as Carter did a great job to avoid coming down into traffic, we'll say.
And Charles Teed nearly lost it on the apron there just after the incident, but he also did a good job of controlling it. So it was definitely a good job that we didn't have a bigger incident, because it very easily could have involved 3 or 4 cars there.
So several drivers electing to top off. Keep in mind, Gibson, we mentioned, missing the start, 2 laps down with this situation. Gabe Wood is 3 laps down, so they may have to hope for a lot of luck. 17th on back, however, did elect to just top off now to be able to try and switch things up a bit strategy-wise. Let's talk strategy, in fact, because The projected fuel windows, similar to Homestead Miami Speedway, Andrew, for tonight, around 40 laps.
Yeah, so you know that based on Homestead, we will have some drivers trying some alternate strategies, and definitely I like this call from particularly the back half of this field. There's really nothing to lose for them to come down pit lane and try and get themselves a little bit off strategy, really start to work it and see even at this early stage whether or not they can make enough of a difference that later on in the run it'll come good for them.
And keep in mind, when it came to Texas last season, part of the major thrower of that race, the fuel strategy that came into play with drivers like Alexis Newsom trying to save fuel to get towards the end of that respective race with how the cautions flew early on in that one. But expecting a one-to-go signal in the upcoming moments or so, Matt Wagner still in the race lead. He's led 6 of the 7. Michael Goodman second. Andrew Wood is up to third. Craig Forsyth gained 4 spots in the span of 6 laps under green to fourth. But Trevor Malone rounding out the top 5. The biggest movers, though, how about Samuel Ryman, who stayed out? That picked up 16 spots now. But Matt Taylor and Ricky Harden, partly with the strategy, partly with some of the passes, are also up 12.
Yeah, definitely some big movers towards the back of the field with that pit strategy, but I think the interesting thing to watch is Texas has always been one of those tracks where tires, depending on how you drive the car, they can last or they can not last. And I think in this case, they generally should be able to last a fairly long time and be able to hold on. So I don't think there should be too big of a tire advantage, but there's always that threat from the cars that pit that they might just have that little bit of an advantage that'll allow them to really work their way through this field.
Lights are still on, by the way. That's why drivers continuing to pace here at Legacy, Texas. This is not one of the quickie yellow circuits, keep in mind, here at this facility. And of course, you have to remember with the new version of Texas, that's had some intriguing history of it as of late, obviously. But when it comes to Legacy Texas, one of the 2 Legacy versions of circuits being utilized by Lionheart again this season. Second year in a row, they've plan to use Legacy Texas, but also an additional one, Andrew.
Yeah, so we traditionally will also use Legacy Kentucky as well for any races that go to Kentucky. And then, of course, in the Retro Series, in the Lotus 79 car, we will almost exclusively go to the Legacy versions because obviously an old school car, we want the oldest track model that we can get.
Good point indeed. Meanwhile, the drivers do have the lights out on top of the iRacing pace car. And that's something drivers may take of note now. That was a sequence under yellow about 3 upwards to nearly 4 pace laps under the safety car. 3 total officially. 1 rolling 2-set pace car. So that may impact strategy later on for some of these drivers. Pace car is off, green flags out, back and away from Texas. And Matt Wagner timed that up very well, leading already by 5 car lengths over Michael Goodman.
Yes, but Michael Goodman is rapidly closing on the back of Matt Wagner, but look right behind him. That is Andrew Wood in 3rd place, and he is already one of our big movers, and he is looking really hungry here, Justin.
Wood, remember, involved in a few incidents last time out at Homestead Miami Speedway. And those icons and decals around his race machine, looking to try and utilize speed. As Wood has to check up for Goodman, as Goodman tried to get a run towards the top.
And that's one of the things that we'll be looking for is those runs that you mentioned. It's very important to keep your momentum up at a track like this where you don't really have a corner where you're slowing down greatly. So if you build up your momentum lap after lap, that's where you get these passes done. And I think that's what Wood is going to try and do. But you also get people like Goodman defending against that. But we've got a little bit of a hornet's nest here for 4th place.
Yes, indeed. Trevor Malone amongst those trying to hold on to positions. Craig Forsyth from the bottom moves into 5th spot. Ron Hacker under attack from the inside, though, by the purple and white machine. Big Joe Hassard, huge checkup in the aero wash.
Hassert nearly got into the apron there. That's one of the dangers at Texas, is the apron is really, really treacherous. And you try to get as close to that white line as possible, but if you touch it, it can so easily throw you out towards that outside wall and disaster. So good save there from Joe Hassert early on in this race.
And that can go for tracks as well, like Atlanta Motor Speedway, a few others. Your competitors aren't usually happy if you accidentally touch the very edge of the apron. Battle for ninth in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as well. That's Jacob Oster, who's up to that position. Tony Schowen able to defend up high, with Will Gibson shuffling back to 11th.
Yeah, so it looks like we've really got some pockets of action forming here, but we haven't seen a full pack really yet. So it's very interesting to watch what's happening with these drivers as they're trying to search out these lines through the corners, trying to see whether that high side is going to hang on or whether the low line is going to work. I think you're going to see the lines, as the stint goes on, keep moving up the racetrack. So you look at the likes of where Ron Hacker's running now, I think more and more drivers are going to start moving up there, as we see even Joe Hassert, he's now starting to move up the track just a little bit here.
See a little bit of a squeeze there too. Of note, mentioned some of the packs forming about, and when it comes to Matthew Short, he is the only driver who topped off under the previous caution who has stuck with the top 17 groupings. Everyone else who went in pit, they've dropped back 1.6 seconds already.
And that's a huge benefit for Matthew Short. That's going to put him in really good position as the end of this run sort of comes around. And when you get an advantage like that, that's the type of thing that within the race, you're cognizant of just how much of an advantage you're gaining, and you're cognizant of what that's going to mean on the next pit stop cycle. But that's assuming we get to green flag pit stop, because there's some very close action here, both in that battle for first, but more importantly in this battle for ninth here.
About a second or so back of the race lead group are these drivers. Jacob Oster really wants to be the Pied Piper of Pack 2. Will Gibson, though, wants to try and fight for the Pied Piper, to try and be the person who plays the tune.
And we saw this last week at Homestead as well. When Jacob Oster went to the front of the pack, he really started to pull them back towards the leading pack. So he'll be looking to do that exact same thing here today, but Will Gibson is not letting him have this easy. I wonder if they're going to fall into a rhythm and maybe do a little bit of swap drafting here, or whether they're going to continue to fight each other and really try and take the lines from each other and end up actually costing them time.
2x2 amongst this group, and keep in mind, last time by, in regards to that time, they lost about a tenth or so to a majority of the lead cars with all that scrapping. And they still scrap about to try and battle for the flute to try and play some songs. Meanwhile, behind them, this is amongst the grouping of drivers who had hit previous time under yellow. Jasper and Ryan Eric King are amongst those scrapping for position. Joe Branch is also in this group, Mike Rigney as well, with Georgia and Zaldo amongst those of note. Here's the SimRace247.com machine for that on board.
I really love Christian Jasper's paint scheme. It reminds me of that old Andre Ribeiro paint scheme from the mid-90s with the Tasman car. Just a great paint scheme on that car, Justin.
And the color palette, too, comes up to mind as well, more so for a stock car reference to some of the initial Jasper Racing cars, which match some of those colors utilized in this machine. Jasper, though, now is in 18th spot. Looking up the road still, the wrestling match continues between Will Gibson's butt kicker sponsored machine and Jacob Oster in the factory-backed car. Oster trying to find his way again to the bottom side to try and make some moves.
Yeah, it does look like they're starting to cooperate just a little bit more. They're not cutting each other off on the lines as much as they were in the first few laps, but I'm not sure if it's a little bit too little too late, because that front group has really stretched it out to almost 1.5 seconds now over this battle for this ninth place pack, that we'll call it. But the lead pack is really starting to stretch it out here.
You're right about that, with the top 8 separated by 1 second at the moment, and the fact that the swapping for that lead car for the pack not working. Craig Forsyth, meanwhile, in the lead pack, is amongst those now trying to run nearly to the outside wall at Texas. That's a throwback.
Yeah, this is the old school DW12 action where you could see drivers running all over the track, and one of the reasons that you can do that here is just because on this old scan the corners are symmetrical in terms of banking, so you really do get much more momentum up, and it just allows you to carry that momentum on the high side like you see Forsyth doing. Oh no.
Some drivers are having technical issues, and one nearly brought out the caution. A several grouping-filled pack of cars have all had issues. Jeff Gion, AJ Musselman, Gonzalo Munoz are amongst those, along with Gabe Wood, who have all had technical issues at the exact same time. It is worth noting in some parts of the United States tonight, there are storms impacting those across the Midwest. We take the time to think about those being impacted by the severe weather, and there is a chance for some of that weather and possibly technical issues in general are impacting some now.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part of internet racing, is sometimes all it takes is a lightning strike hitting the wrong place, and you lose connection with the server because that's where your connection was getting routed through, and then suddenly you're out of the race and several laps down by the time your internet reconnects and you're back in. So it's one of those unfortunate realities of internet racing that sometimes these things happen.
So meanwhile, the driving continues with the clouds coming over top. You've seen some of the weather conditions, partly cloudy. Well, we're getting out of the clouds right now, and the track temperature is declining and fast. And that usually means faster speeds, Andrew, in theory.
Yeah, we're definitely going to start to see those speeds rise up as the track cools down, and we're also going to see the battles tighten up. That it'll mean that probably on this next set of tires they'll hold on just a little bit longer, and it just means that tighter, closer racing, and so it's definitely a good thing to see this cloud cover. Even if sometimes we like the looks of the sunny days, it's not necessarily the best for racing.
Indeed. Outside line, though, could also pick up as a result of this. We've seen it come into play a little bit. Jacob Oster utilizing that. Let's take a look, though, at AJ Musselman. We mentioned technical issues. He's amongst those being impacted. He lost 4 laps from it, and he is your Moser Racing featured driver for tonight. Spotlight as showing. 5 times he's finished in the top 10 in the series, and 19 starts entering this evening. 1 time in the top 5. That was back at Kansas, and that was a firework-filled finish that helped set the stage for the championship finale. But AJ Musselman has been in the conversation a couple times in his career in Speedway competition, Andrew. It's just been the matter of the luck and getting the track position.
Yeah, AJ's one of those drivers who he's got the consistency aspect down. He just needs to have that luck and the speed at the right points to make it all come together for him. We've seen him lead a number of races a number of times. He's worked the strategy well, but it just hasn't quite all come together for him in one single race to get the result. But he's definitely one of those drivers, I think, that are just knocking on the door and are ready to break through here at any race now.
Of note, all drivers except for Jeff Gion have now returned back to the track after their technical issues. The battle for 5th, meanwhile, is on because Big Joe Hassert is starting to lose ground to the rest of the top 4. And this could mean a separation of the lead pack from 8 cars to 4 right before the pit stop window.
And of course, Joe Hassert was one of those drivers who really was hugging that inside line, so I'm wondering if he just burned off that right front tire just a little bit by running that tight line. And this is where it's sort of coming into play for him now, is he just cannot stay up with that lead pack of Wagner, Wood, Malone, and Goodman.
Speaking of Wood, he swapped his way up to 2nd position, passing both Malone and Goodman. And Andrew Wood is picking up the tempo. He's one of the fastest cars in the lead pack right now. Whenever he's not getting attempted of a pass to the outside, and just like that, Trevor Malone says, you know what, I want that pace back. Thank you for 2nd again.
Yeah, nice move from Malone there. He's really shown a lot of pace here so far this year. He was obviously very fast at Homestead, Miami with the 2nd place finish there, but He's really impressed me so far at Texas. He was good in qualifying, really good in the race, and he's really making that outside work really well.
Meanwhile, that pack for ninth on back, more than 2 seconds behind Ron Hacker currently. And you have to wonder what the strategy dice may be thrown like from that pack now as a result of all the swapping and shuffling. Keep in mind, Matthew Short, as we talked about a little earlier, he's in 16th. He is amongst those who had the top-off strategy. Meanwhile, for the race lead, they scrap. Oh, wow. The blue cars are either battling for the lead or looking very frightful to be in the race lead on fuel strategy. It seems like having a blue car is a good omen tonight. For now.
Yeah, the blue color cars are definitely looking strong here, so we'll see if that pays off come the end of the race, but at least for now, blue is definitely the color you want to have. Oh, what do we got here?
Andrew Wood and his wood-textured machine watches Trevor Malone take over the lead towards the stripe. Wagner does get the edge barely for the lead lap, but for Malone, he wants that lead for sure now. Pinched down to the bottom, Wagner, Malone getting the run. He's been able to really wheel it in turns 3 and 4 the past couple times. Big checkup this time, and that lets Wood by.
Yeah, the outside line, it seems to work really, really well until you make a small mistake, and then you have to let out of it big, and that's what happened with Malone there through 3 and 4, is just misjudged the corner entry just a little bit, got in there a little too hot, had to let off the gas, and that's allowed Andrew Wood back into second place, but we've still got a very tight battle. Luis Gonzalez-Nunez now moving up and battling with Jacob Oster to try and lead this pack here.
You have to feel that someone like Luis Gonzalez-Nunez wants to perform well tonight, especially as we mentioned the backing for that car involving SimRace247 and their support of Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, who also on the nose cone has the Texas flag on it. So a lot of support for Nunez for his speed tonight. Trying to pull away from Jacob Oster, able to pull away a couple car lengths with the aero wash factored in, but we're in the fuel window. 43 laps in, and this is looking very brightful for those who topped off because Wagner needs to pit this time. He's called it over the radio. The leader's coming in.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the window, and it's not quite far enough for Wagner to be able to stretch it. So this is definitely, he's got 2 more stops to go after this one, no question about it. So will it be the same story as last week, Justin, where Wagner was so fast early but used up all the fuel, didn't get the strategy right, and found himself way back in the field because of it?
Yeah. Correct myself, the Chilean flag, of course, on Luis Gonzalez-Nunez machine. Meanwhile, though, Gonzalez-Nunez amongst those pitting, just pit in the second pack. The battle for the race lead is on. It's scrapping to the bottom side. It's Andrew Wood who makes the move in the 64.
These will be the first laps that Andrew Wood leads in the Speedway Series, and I know this will be a good monkey to get off of Andrew Wood's back because I know he was looking forward to joining the Lionheart competition and really doing well, and this is the first time we've really seen him at the front of the field so far, so great to see from Andrew Wood.
So the pit window wide open for those who did not top off under the caution. 45 laps. Around 46 for most of the drivers seems to be the mark. Will Gibson has indicated he'll pit this time. Michael Goodman has called over the radio as well. No major mistakes on entry for anyone so far. Here for this window, Wood keeps on going for now, but Goodman is in. 46 laps is the furthest he's gone now. Remember, Wood stayed in the draft most of that run before this window.
Yeah, and this is so important for Andrew Wood, staying out as long as he is. This proves that he can potentially stretch it. He's on the very edge of the window as he comes in this lap. So lap 47, a monumental stretch from Andrew Wood, but great job, great showing from him so far.
Keep it on going, though, as expected, is Matthew Short, though, and now the Infinite Machine is in the race lead for the first time tonight. He's led his first lap of the season. Vern Hawkins III, who is just behind him, is coming in. So Short will be on his own. He has a 2-second buffer over everybody else on his strategy.
Yeah, and this will be so important for Short. If he can maintain this buffer and even extend it just a little bit on this pit stop, he might have an insurmountable lead barring a caution here. It'll take a monumental effort for Jasper and Branch to really get back towards him. And if it plays out like it did in Homestead, where potentially they can stretch it just far enough to go one stop from here, this could be a very, very good sign for Short.
One driver did get hit with speeding. Hugo Gallus in the 84 has the first speeding penalty of the night. He'll be in the box for a lengthy time as a result of a 40-second stop and hold. Kane and Ryman just came in this time. They were amongst those who topped off under caution. Several more coming on in. Here's a look at one of the close entries in the heart of the pack. Hello, that's not a good way to enter.
That was very much less than ideal. You can see the 4-car there. He just gets onto the apron as he's trying to brake, and he basically just takes most of the braking power away from his car, so he just slides past pit entry, and he'll get an unsafe pit entry penalty for that one, unfortunately. So definitely not the way that you want to get onto pit road here at Texas.
Matthew Short has just pit as well after running towards the back of the main groupings. Meanwhile, some of the drivers are fighting. Short just overran his pit stall, worth noting. It's also worth noting that the net race lead has really shuffled around a bit in some of the packs. Forsyth, he's battling right now with someone not for position, believe, on the pylon. You also have drivers like Andrew Wood battling with Trevor Malone. Matt Wagner is 1.2 seconds ahead of this. Everyone else is just pit on track.
Yeah, Wagner had an excellent pit cycle, and that's allowed him to get a gap back to what will rotate through to be second through fourth with Malone, Wood, and Dupree. But you're right, Forsyth was at the time fighting with Gavin Sanders, who had stayed out as long as he could. Sanders is definitely one who could potentially make it from here. If I'm doing my math right, it'll be a 46 lap and a 45 lap stint for Sanders if he tries to go from here, so that's definitely doable.
Now a speeding penalty under this cycle. Chris Fowler also got caught speeding. He just now started his service, so 2 speeding penalties, 1 unsafe pit entry, and 1 driver with a 1-second lead for now in Matt Wagner. 80 laps to go. Malone and Wood battle for second. Joe Hassard and Isaiah Dupree are battling for 4th position currently, you see on screen. And it's worth noting for some of those drivers in that respective grouping, when it comes to them, they're a little bit quicker than the race leaders at the moment. Matt Wagner has the oldest tires on the track currently, stint-wise.
Yeah, first to pit for Matt Wagner, so he definitely has the older tires on his car right now, so that will give these drivers just a little bit of an advantage. Hopefully allows them to sort of reel in that lead for Matt Wagner. We've definitely already seen that Malone and Wood are getting very close to the drafting range, but back further in the pack, we are in a hornet's nest here. Michael Goodman, he's sort of backed up. He was in that lead pack. He did not have a good pit cycle. Now he's battling here with George Anzaldo, Matt Taylor, Ricky Harden, Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, and so many others with these new tires on. I think they're all feeling just a little bit brave here, Justin.
And some of those drivers are lapped down, such as Coogan, Fowler in the grouping, and Zoldo around that grouping as well, who just had to pit again under this green flag cycle. Not a great run for the 6. But you have to remember, the more they squabble, the more time they could potentially lose with some of the aero wash and some of the shuffling. That can lose some time. Here's a look at Anzaldo and his pit stop. What did we say about that apron? And that's a poor cone.
Yeah, that cone is never going to be the same, unfortunately, Justin. Yeah, George was, to be fair, he was never making that. I don't know that he was making that even if he nailed that pit entry, because he was coming in really, really hot there.
So Anzaldo now in the pit lane again, this time with the pit entry mistake. Now it gets really intriguing here, because now, if it stays green for this point, we have another fuel mileage race on our hands, similar to the last time the series came to Texas during the inaugural season, where those who topped off in the first caution positioned themselves really strongly before the end of the race. Others who stayed out under the caution, such as Ricky Harden, guess who gains a lot of time as a result? Harden, who has 16 spots gained, has a lot that can go well for him if he gets a caution. He was a contender because of cautions helping his strategy last time.
Yeah, the question is, will the cautions fall the right way for the likes of Ricky Harden? He's definitely come through the field. Matt Taylor's another one who's come up very strongly through the field. Isaiah Dupree up 10 positions as well, so there are a number of big movers. But will the strategy work out for these drivers? Because if I'm being honest, I'm looking all the way back to the likes of Gavin Sanders in 17th position. Some of these drivers who have pitted multiple times, they're very likely to be able to make it on fuel from here. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens if a caution comes out. It could save a number of these drivers who are up towards the, go ahead. Oh, that was close.
Oh, that is a lot close. They nearly touched in the quad oval. That is Goodman and Nunez nearly slamming side pod to tire in the turns 1 and 2, and Nunez is now getting freight train from it.
Yeah, that was less than ideal. You don't want... Oh, and they nearly touched coming out of turn 4 there. That was Harden and Nunez. So Nunez is getting very close to the drivers underneath him right now. And if I'm one of the drivers like Tony Schowen behind them, I'm just holding my breath. Oh, as Schowen nearly gets rear-ended. Who was that right behind him? I think that was Ron Hacker. Nearly got into the back of Tony Schowen. They're coming off the 2. So these drivers are running so hard. We are on the edge of our seats here watching this, Justin.
Yeah, this is not the type of racing if you're someone like, say, Jacob Oster you want to see, who lost time in the pit window, and he is the car that has the popcorn seat to where he may get the bucket of popcorn poured on his head if they make contact. For the battle for the race lead, meanwhile, Trevor Malone is right up there, but it's Charles Teed who is the thorn in everyone's side of the pack. He is the bumper car now for Matt Wagner for the lead.
Yeah, and Teed is trying his best to stay on that lead lap, and potentially, if he can get past Wagner, and a caution comes out, he can get all the way back up. But it's definitely a thorn in the side of particularly Malone and Wood here, because they know that their tire advantage on Matt Wagner is slipping away lap by lap, and every lap that Charles Teed fights with Wagner, it's a lap that they can't do the same. So definitely feel for them, but we've still got battling back in the field, and I don't think we can look away here, Justin.
That's involving that battle still for 10th. Most of this grouping single file. How long is the question, with how much pressure Goodman's been facing from behind this entire run. Again, to his right rear tire, Ricky Harden wraps the top. The Carolina Sim Shop machine passes on by. Blue, yellow, and black machine is up to 10th again. Harden continuing to look strong on the outside tonight.
Yeah, Harden's really done well to make that work. And I think it's definitely a case, especially as the run goes on, where he's just one of those drivers who's able to find the clean air, no matter whether it's high or low. Another driver like that is Tony Schowen, who's starting to make a move on Luis Gonzalez-Nunez. But back at the front, I think Malone is getting a little bit impatient with Charles Teed, and he's really trying to get that lap car back and out of the way so that he can attack Matt Wagner now.
You see the track map, bottom right corner of your screen. It's how some of the separation is built up for some of the packs. Of note, Jim Herrick is not at the start and finish line of the pit lane. He's actually 19th, interestingly enough, in the 40 machine. But you see for the race lead, Trevor Malone again is trying the outside. He's tried this several times and nearly got the job done before the pit cycle the first time around. This time he's got the run into turn 3. Can he make this move work just past halfway?
He's been trying and trying, and one of these days I think it's going to work. He's got a really tremendous run here down the front straightaway. And Matt Wagner just holding really strong on the bottom, and then Malone just isn't able to keep that momentum up through 1 and 2 to really take it to Wagner and position himself well on the backstretch. So I think one of these days this move is going to work, but it's just not quite there yet for Malone.
In this race, keep in mind, going at blistering paces so far with just the early caution flag. And all this has to bring up that fatigue level for some. Nunez, meanwhile, he's fighting for 7th still. Matt Taylor, once again, is trying to make some moves. He tried the wall a couple times to make some passes late in the last run. This time, he's on the bottom with Tony Schoen to his outside.
Yeah, the battle is fast and furious now for 7th. Tony Schoen's done a really good job this run. He's come up about 4 positions just on this run alone, but the battle for the lead is on, and
here he goes.
Here is Malone on the inside. He's done the over-under, and he's positioned himself. There it is, the move for the lead of the race for Trevor Malone.
Trevor Malone looks to complete it. Matt Wagner says not so fast. He holds on side by side. Malone leads that time around to the stripe for the first time this evening. But Matt Wagner's trying to pull the same move with the diamond, the cross, the draft, the inside again for the number 3.
What a crossover move there from Matt Wagner. But will Malone be able to hold on up top? No, Wagner slides up in front of him. He's got that number 1 position back.
Back and forth we go for the race lead. And all of this as well, remember, Andrew Wood, he's watching and waiting to see. Will he be able to knock on the door and say, I'm here. Thank you for holding the door open for the lead. He's not had that chance yet. He's got the freshest tires out of these 3 by about 4 laps than Wagner and by 2 laps over Malone.
But does Wood even want to pass here, JP, or does he want to just save fuel and see if he can maybe somehow find a way to cut out a stop? It'll be very interesting to see whether Wood even tries to enter this battle or whether he just continues to sit back here, maybe save some fuel, and maybe just pull one strategy rabbit out of his hat.
Yes, indeed. By the way, the battle for 7th, it's continued to stay very busy. With under 60 to go, Jacob Oster is now starting to make some moves on the high side now. Keep in mind, Jacob, no in-person spotter at the start of the race. Alexis Newsom has since jumped onto the pit box to help him for this critical time.
And there's no one better in a race like this to have on your pit box than Alexis Newsom. She did some pure wizardry in terms of fuel strategy last year that got her a number of race wins and ultimately, I think, helped her clinch the championship. So definitely a person that I would want on my stand if I were Jacob Oster.
Especially with some of the scrapping in turn with Nunez and Taylor up front, with Nunez really wanting to be in 7th and really trying to use the middle line to do so currently. The race lead has settled down for now. Big Joe Hassard's leading pack 2 with Dupree and Forsyth. And it's worth noting when it comes to Craig Forsyth, you have to put in a lot of work to get to the second pack. He's in 6th currently. He came out of the pit lane on his own and essentially had to close up the whole gap on his own, as well as with some of the traffic. Keep in mind, we're almost at the second pit stop window under green flag conditions. And right now, a few drivers are going to be very close to trying to make it to the end. Drivers like Wood could make it if they are on their same margins as the last run.
Yeah, it's so close for Andrew Wood. I don't know whether he'll be able to make it, but certainly the likes of Wagner and Malone, they won't be able to make it for sure. It's Wood that I'm not sure about. Tony Schoen is another one. Craig Forsyth is another one. But I think Forsyth, the amount of work that he had to do to get back, as you mentioned, to Dupree and Hassard, that probably means he hasn't been able to hit a number. But yeah, Schoen is one to look at. Jenkins is another one, and Hawkins is another one that could potentially shake up the aspect of this race towards the end if their strategy comes good.
And a pit call just came over the radio. Next time by, Matt Wagner from the race lead says he'll have to pit. That is 40 on the dot. That is for sure. For most of these drivers now, it looks like, as he's gotten a few others joining him on the radio saying they can't make it any further than this lap. That puts them out of the window towards the end by up to 12 laps.
Yeah, there's no hope for Wagner. There's no hope for any of these drivers that are coming down. I think Malone's coming down as well. So That's first and second places. Malone gets really in there hot, but he does a good job to get it slowed down just enough there, but a little bit of a sketchy entry there. But crucially, Andrew Woods staying out for another few laps, and he's got someone to draft with, so this could just help him extend this stint just far enough to potentially make it on fuel, but it's going to be very close, I think, for the likes of Wood, or looking back a little bit further, Showen, or I think Hawkins and Jenkins are two more to watch.
Battle per second on screen, no call for these drivers yet. Nunez has also just pit from what is now the second pack currently on track. Wood has an advantage of 2.4 seconds over these drivers. Expect more drivers to come in this time, such as Dupree possibly. Yes, indeed, there he goes, and there's the Dodge coming from the outside from Forsyth and Company.
Yeah, and that's worth mentioning that we haven't really talked about this, how difficult this pit entry is, but you're basically having to slow down on the low line through 3 and 4 in order to make this pit road. So you really do have to trust the people around you a lot to make sure that they know that you're coming to pit road and know what you're doing. Because it can get very dicey, and these are the situations where we potentially see an accidental caution come out through these pit cycles.
Matt Taylor has also just ducked in. Ron Hacker plans to come in this time by. Munstow's still going. Tony Showen you see on screen. Remember, was Munstow's involved in a couple of the big ones towards the front stretch in Homestead, Miami. Looking very solid here tonight, as he continues to chug along at 207 miles per hour. Wood, Forsyth still stay out. Joe Hassard is in this time, though, in the number 11 machine. Pit stops are taking about 8.5 to 9 seconds for reference. For those curious, delta in the lane itself about 30 seconds total.
And so I've been doing some math, and it looks to me like lap 91, so 43 to go, that's the lap that you really want to get to if you're trying to make it on one more stop. 44, you can probably do it with some fuel saving, but 45 is just a really big ask if it goes green. So that's what these drivers who have stayed out, like Wood, Forsyth, and Showen, if they can make it to 43 to go, that's when you know they're probably good to go.
Interestingly enough, when it comes to Wagner and Malone's separation, Wagner had the faster, or the slower time, should say, in the box in the lane. Malone was quicker, but Wagner picked up about a second plus on the track with their entry marks. So that's also something you have to consider is, as some can say, and have said before, your entry can gain you sometimes up to 3 seconds on track with how confident you are and how dangerous you feel you can be. Keep in mind, undercut can also be huge.
Yeah, so coming in that little bit early does give you a distinct tire advantage for those first few laps, and it can be a major factor. But you're absolutely right. Pit entry is so crucial, and we have some drivers coming down pit road. It looks like Craig Forsyth, Tony Showen, they're right on that edge. Michael Goodman, Ricky Harden as well. They're right on the edge of making it on one more stop. Andrew Wood coming down one lap later, and it looks like he's just a little bit more comfortable, but it's going to be touch and go for all of these drivers. It'll be interesting to see whether they can stretch or not.
He's on that money lap you're referring to. But guess who's quietly moved his way into a very strong position? With Matthew Short pitting this time, he's at risk. Who's not at risk? Gavin Sanders. We haven't said his name much all night. He right now is just starting his 40th lap this time by for Team Race First Arctic. He was very quiet at Homestead, Miami to start the season. He's coming in just this time by. He can make it to the end from this point, it looks like, as that will put him at 41 to go.
Yeah, and Sanders was one of the leading drivers from that group of cars that came down and topped off on our one and only caution so far. So he's really using that strategy to his advantage and pushing this as far as he can. So where other drivers here might still have to be saving on this last green flag run, it looks like Sanders, who's coming down pit road this time by, he should be able to push full rich basically and maybe make up some time on track as well and pull this one out for Team Race First here.
Things are cycling together with Wagner, Malone, Wood, the net top three for now. Wood very tight on his fuel margins currently. Wagner and Malone for sure have to pit one more time and are hoping for a caution flag. Dupree also needs to pit another time. Forsyth, he's tied on the window. He's in pack 2 currently. And everyone else who is for sure good to go, including drivers like Mike Rigney and Dean Mull, they only have about a 10-second buffer at the moment over the number 3.
And it's worth mentioning for Wood, those 2 drivers that we saw on screen there, those were lap down cars, so he has lost touch with Wagner and Malone. So Wood now, he's all in on the fuel save strategy. He's going to be fuel saving behind those 2 lap cars. Similarly, Forsyth here, he'll be fuel saving right behind Joe Hassard and trying everything he can to make it to the end. But it's going to be a tough stretch for both of those drivers.
So the green flag window has just closed with under 40 to go. The magic number to make it to the end has been passed. The question is going to be which drivers will make their way to HyperX Victory Lane tonight. We're about to find out in just a little while. You're watching Lionheart Speedway Series competition from iRacing's virtual Texas Motor Speedway. We'll be back in just a moment. You're watching RaceSpotTV and ESTV.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to RaceSpotTV and ESTV's coverage of the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing for what has been an intriguing run of the SimRace247 Texas 200 presented by Gomez Sim Industries. Justin Prince, Andrew Kinsella with you with the producer Andrew Kankipati as we are inside the final 35 laps from No Limits, Texas. Matt Wagner, Trevor Lone, Andrew Wood, the top 3 currently, followed by Matt Taylor, Isaiah Dupree, Craig Forsyth, Big Joe Hassard, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, the top 8. But the big story of the day, fuel strategy. After the opening few laps had a caution within the end of lap 6, Andrew, fuel strategy has become live and well with Wood on the save strategy, Wagner, Malone and company on the full push strategy currently.
Yeah, and Wood is even on the ultra save strategy because, of course, he didn't even come in during that first caution. So a monumental fuel saving job from the likes of Andrew Wood and a couple of others such as Craig Forsyth, Ricky Harden, Tony Shaw, and Michael Goodman. But you're absolutely right. Matt Wagner, just like last week at Homestead, where he went out, led the most laps, led for a substantial part of the race, seemed to have the fastest car out there, but the fuel strategy just didn't turn his way. And without a caution here, I fear that we are falling into the same space where Matt Wagner he's not going to be able to make up the time that he needs in order to pass some of these drivers who have been able to cut out a stop here.
It's worth noting when it comes to the potential of the strategies, with how close some of the drivers are going to be on fuel and when some of the drivers will have to take said fuel with about 12 to go. 2 drivers have rolled the dice and elected to pit. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Matthew Short. Here's the thing with the risk of that. They are both a lap down with their decision. In fact, Short has lost 2 laps with his pit decision in the 19.
And that's actually really surprising for Short, because we have been talking about him as one of the drivers who were potentially going long because he did come in on that first round of pit stop. So I'm wondering if there was a little bit of a miscalculation on Short's part that forced him to come into the pit lane. But yeah, it's absolute disaster for these drivers, especially if a yellow comes out. They're going to be trapped well down in this field. So this is definitely the danger zone that we're looking at here for these drivers on this 2-stop strategy.
You know something else? Look who's in 5th now. Andrew Wood, he is dropping back quickly. He has already lost 3 seconds this run and initially came out behind traffic. The traffic has ran away from him. He's been passed by several drivers who still also have to likely come in. But one of the drivers who is on his same strategy, albeit has to save even more fuel, Craig Forsyth, is now on his rear wing just about as a result of Wood trying to back it down to save his gas.
Yeah, absolutely. So Andrew Wood knows that he's not racing with any of the drivers in front of him right now. He knows that he's racing with Craig Forsyth. So as long as he keeps Forsyth behind him, he's on the good end of this strategy. But Forsyth is definitely a driver who can potentially pull this one out as well. So it's important that Wood keeps that context about him throughout the course of the stint and make sure that he knows who he's racing and who he can just let go and draft off of.
Keep in mind, you see some of the technical issues that can flare up for some. That also may be something to be considered for some, especially with the different pace discrepancies coming up on some of the strategies in particular. Around the circuit in turn 1, you're seeing along the top line, drivers like Vern Hawkins III letting competitors go. Vern Hawkins III, 22nd, 1 lap down. Paul Jenkins is the first 1 lap down. In fact, the 2 teammates lined up letting those cars go. By the way, Gavin Sanders, for reference, he is still about 11 seconds back of Andrew Wood. He has not gained really any time to the 64.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sanders seems to be sort of leading his grouping here, so he's really not able to take advantage of anything. And Wood has been in the draft of Matt Taylor and Isaiah Dupree for several laps now, so there was a little bit of time gained from Sanders early on in this stint, but it's just sort of stabilized now with where Wood is on the track versus where Sanders is. And Sanders has got a long way to make up if he wants to get all the way up to Andrew Wood. But I'm not even sure that he realizes just how close Wood is to making it and whether or not he's racing Wood at this point.
That is something you have to think about. Keep in mind, Bill Krause, he's trying to build a house right now up at the spotter stand. He's actually spotting for Andrew Wood currently, for those who missed the pun. And for reference, the 10 has no in-sim spotter currently on the spotter stand. Towards the top line, you see amongst those who have looked pretty strong tonight. You can see some of the cars who have quietly moved their way around this pylon currently on the circuit. For example, you see Isaiah Dupree qualified around mid-pack tonight. Looked very clean, very calm all night in the Graphics Esports back machine.
Yeah, Isaiah Dupree's looked really strong here. Unfortunately, he's one of the drivers who we don't think can make it, but right in front of him as well, Matt Taylor qualified 22nd here. He is now in 3rd position. So quietly, that race-verse car has just worked its way all the way up to the front of this field. Matt Taylor with another really strong drive, but again, I just don't think that there's any way that he can make it on fuel, so he's going to have to come down and he's going to lose all the positions that he's made up.
And I will say the interesting thing when it comes to Matt Taylor, who has a bit of movement off the corner with Dupree, as he continues to scrap it about, he's one of those drivers who, when he's in the aero wash, in the dirty air of our competitors, he'll find a way to make passes work that others cannot. The Lotus 79 comes to mind, and tracks such as Richmond also come to mind when it comes to Matt Taylor.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. He's definitely one of the stronger drivers with that aero wash. He just has really fine throttle control that allows him to just find that extra little bit, get to the gas just a little bit smoother, and find a way to make the car rotate with the pedals. So definitely one of the drivers that is very strong. But yeah, it'll be unfortunate because I think he's coming down pit lane this time by.
He just called it indeed, yes. Taylor was doing a great job trying to use some of the clean air as well to defend with Dupree up high. And Taylor does make it to the speed limit. He's now in, so the window's open for those who were hoping for a caution. Wagner, Dupree also coming this time by. And the interesting with Wagner, he is in the midst of some of the traffic. Wood, he's going to be in the interesting situation of hoping he can stretch the fuel. Wagner is now in.
And the important thing for Wood is going to be finding a new partner to draft with, because the draft is so important to fuel saving at a track like this. It's like half a mile per gallon that it'll be different between being in the draft and not. So
yep.
It's so important that he find a new partner here if he's going to make this fuel last all the way that he needs to. And it looks like he's got someone now.
He's found Matthew Short, who, remember, is on that very different strategy, 2 laps down currently. And the problem is, his draft help has ran away. Matt Wagner just cycled behind him for reference on how big the difference is between stretching it and having to pit. Down to about the final 12 laps this time around. Malone has just came into the pit lane. Wood now the race leader. The battle for 8th is about to turn into the battle for possibly as high as 7 or as back as 7. We'll see if anyone else joins in. Some of the others are trying to maneuver from different lines. Ron Hacker in.
Hacker's in, and looks like Malone, you mentioned, in as well. So this is really coming towards the end of the stint. It looks like Will Gibson is probably another driver that I just don't think can make it. He'll probably be in soon. Joe Hassert will be in soon. Jacob Oster, there's a driver who, if there's any driver who I believe could maybe fuel save that extra lap, it might be Jacob Oster, but he's going to be going so slowly right now, so I don't even know that it'll be worth it for him. But I think he's committed to trying to make it, but it'll be touch and go for him.
So coming up towards the final laps, 10 to go from Texas. Wood right now running 25 fives to try and make it. He does have drivers who topped off behind him making moves. Craig Forsyth, he's not saving as hard. He's running 25 flats. Gavin Sanders is still 10 seconds back. Last time we ran about a couple tenths quicker than the 64, so he's in fuel-saving mode since he was the lead car in his pack.
One of the things I will say here, Justin, is this is definitely the most dangerous part of the race in terms of potentially a caution, because you have drivers in ultra fuel save mode and you have drivers on brand new tires. So if we're going to have an incident, and just as I say that, we have a caution.
It's the big one for the second caution. Dakota DeMade and Charles T collecting into turn 1. One more is flipping. And Ron Duriel after Charles T knocked the wall down on entry. And this changes everything.
My, oh my. So here we can see what happened here. So just up in front of this, Charles T hits the outside wall coming through the dog leg and then just collects a number of drivers there. Dakota DeMade is one of them. It looks like, I think that's Michael Goodman is another who's having a really strong run here today. He was trying to make it on fuel as well. And that was a big impact for a number of drivers. But going back to the fuel strategy here, one of the most crucial things that happened just before this caution came out, Matt Wagner unlapped himself. So he will have fresh tires and low fuel, as we see. What a violent impact that was. But Matt Wagner is going to have fresh tires, low fuel, and I think 4 laps to go to make it through all of the drivers in front of him to potentially steal this win again.
At the time of the caution, just 13 drivers were on the lead lap. In total, 3 or 4 have just taken tires this cycle. Joe Branch, Samuel Ryman, Mike Rigney, Ricky Harden also took tires. Everybody else has stayed out. The gap was so big that Ricky Harden actually came out in front of Wagner and Dakota DeMade as well as Joe Branch. We'll see how things sort out cycling-wise here. So Wood, Forsythe, Sanders, Gibson, Schowen, Oster, Herrick are all staying out, as well as DeMade under this sequence. This is the final restart expected of the night, as by the time the green flag waves, we'll be past the point of no return based on the previous pace totals.
My, oh my. Time after time, the Speedway Series always seems to deliver a dramatic finish, and we thought this was going to be a strategy race to the end. We thought the drama would be who was going to be able to make it, but now the drama is who is going to be fastest over these next 4 laps in order to seal this victory. It's going to be a wild one, I think, to this finish.
Lights are still on, so can confirm. 1 to go expected at 5 to go. Green flag at 4 to go, which is the point of return tonight. More drivers who are laps down getting some damage repairs and tires. Coogan, Jasper, Big Joe Hassard amongst those. You never know when it comes to this season so far, because you see the contenders towards the front most of the night. Caution comes out. Boom. You have a completely different set of players who can battle in. I will say this. Wood might still be close, as well as Forsythe despite this. Will Gibson for sure. He's 43 laps into a run under caution here. And one driver is stopped on the track in Dakota DeMade. I think he has to let the whole field go, which will cost him that lead lap positioning. So that means just 12 will be in the lead lap now. There it is. Depending on if he cycles in front of the leader, he might get a wave. He has wing damage regardless.
Yeah, I think he was picked up by the pace car is what happened, so he needed to wait for the pace car, and he'll get a wave around, but he'll have wing damage, so he won't be a factor in whatever happens here.
Why is he not going, though? It's under 10 to go, so he's now point to the side. So either way, it's swapping the lead lap. Will Gibson's topped off because of his fuel situation, and there goes DeMade and off the track. He is done for the night, it looks like. He's put his car immediately onto the tow truck. 4 to go. Wood, Forsythe, Sanders, Schowen, Oster, Herrick on old tires. Newer tires for Matt Wagner. Fresh tires for Branch, Ryman, Rigney, Harden, Will Gibson. All amongst the lead lap. What will these new tires do is the big question. Is there enough time to pass what would be about upwards of 6-7 cars to win it?
It's going to be tough, but these tires are so old for these cars in the lead pack. It might just be enough. Well, it's going to be interesting to see, and we're about to find out what's about to happen here, Justin.
This is the finish coming up for the SimRace247 Texas 200 presented by Gomez Sim Industries. iRacing pace car off, and Wood checks up the field. Wood checks up the pack. They wreck for second. Caution is out, and that is wow.
I don't believe what I've just seen here, Justin. I'm not sure what Andrew Wood was doing there. He just jumped on the brakes after going, and that's wrecked second through 5th place here, coming back to the green flag.
Take a look. Yeah, that just looks... I don't even know what to say.
I've never seen that happen. I've never seen that happen in a race like this.
You didn't go full throttle is what we're hearing, but at the same time, you don't expect this in IndyCar action because of the result we just seen.
Yeah, so he didn't go full throttle, but he did let off the throttle. I don't know if he got on the brakes or not, but he certainly let off the throttle after going, and yeah, just not a good restart there from Wood, and it's cost 4 or 5 drivers a good finish here.
At minimum, Tony Schowen damage, Forsythe, Godso, DeMade, as mentioned, Toby for the green. Here's a look from Wagner. And wow. I just don't know what to say. That is absolutely stunning, Andrew, to see.
I am stunned. I haven't seen a restart like that in a long time. Like, the only thing that I can think of is that as he was rolling onto the throttle, his foot slipped off the throttle and it came off again. That's the only thing that I can think of, because Wood does not drive like that. Like, he would not pull restart shenanigans like that on purpose. So I find it so hard to believe that what we saw happen just happened.
And the only other thing I can think about would be trying to make sure he didn't pass the pace car in case it wasn't past the commitment cone, because we've seen drivers lose races like that in the past. That is the only other thing that can pop up on my mind there, Andrew, is depending on where he started to hit the gas, if it would have been a trigger for him passing the pace car.
It's possible, but it seemed like the pace car was well off the track, and yeah, it's one of those puzzling things. Well, I'm sure be talking to Andrew Wood in a few moments here, so we'll have to get his side of the story. But we can only speculate at this point what happened.
Yeah. Hearing that the race restart there will be under review, so final lap, unofficially, Wood is in front of the field, Oster second, Herrick third, Wagner and Branch, the top 5 currently. Samuel Ryman, he's in 6th position unofficially right now. Samuel Ryman was in around the 20s before the caution. He was, in fact, one of the last cars in the lead lap before the final cautions of this race.
Yeah, and Sam has always been one of those drivers who will work the fuel strategy and try and find an advantage, and hats off to him, because he found that advantage and he's going to pick up a nice top 10 out of it.
Again, all unofficial. But for Andrew Wood, second start in this series, a longtime iRacing veteran in the open-wheeled side of the iRacing world. And now, he'll be able to lead the field to a checkered for the first time. Checker flag waves unofficially. Wood comes across the stripe first in the SimRace247 Texas 200 presented by Gomez Sim Industries. Oster, Herrick, Wagner, Branch unofficially the top 5. What a way to end race 2 of the season.
Yeah, that was a great race for 129 laps, Justin. We had a little bit of everything. We had that fuel saving strategy that was looking so fascinating for so much of the race. We had some drivers just going flat out. Great racing, very few cautions, but then what a way to end it.
So it's already been informed for drivers that is under review what we just seen for the final restart of the night. Andrew Wood, Jacob Oster, Jim Herrick, the top 3 currently on circuit. Andrew, I want to get your thoughts on how tonight fared out in the first place, because as the rest of the drivers cross the stripe here and finish up the cool-down lap, we've seen a lot happen again here at No Limits Texas. Similar tones to what we've seen at Homestead, albeit some of the tones carried from last year's script until the script was lit on fire with 5 to go.
Yeah, and the worst part for Andrew Wood is, regardless of why that final restart happened, he had really driven such a good race before that happened. Like, he was one of the few drivers who actually didn't come down pit lane, but was still able to save enough fuel to make the strategy work. So he had been doing wonders with the fuel saving. He had, throughout his fuel saving, managed to maintain a good pace, and then that restart happened. And yeah, we'll have to figure out when we talk to him what happened, but it was a great race for so long, and there was so much action throughout the field. We had some battles for 8th and 9th place that I think that they battled for a good 60 laps side by side, and it was just fantastic to watch.
Let's take a look again. Unofficial race results, keyword unofficial, presented by SimRace247.com. Wood crossed the line first under caution. Jacob Oster, Jim Herrick, the top 3. Wagner, Branch, Ryman the top 6, Rigney, Sanders, Hardin, Will Gibson were the last of the drivers on the lead lap to take the checker. Trevor Malone finished 11th currently, with Dupree, Mull, Nunez back to 14th. Then it went to Ron Hacker, 15th spot did. Chris Fowler recovered from a speeding penalty to cross the line in 16th. What a recovery for Chris Fowler. Paul Jenkins, 17th, short. He did get a lap back for the end in 18th. Taylor Watson, the top 20. Then was Shane Coogan finishing ahead of Jasper, who was amongst the mid-pack groupings early. Ryan King, after his situation, 3 laps down, 23rd. Mike Gibson finished 24th, 3 laps down. Big Joe Hassard, 3 laps down, 25th. Craig Forsyth, after that last restart, 26th unofficially. Shawan was also involved in 27th. Gowers, after his issues, in 28th is where he ends. DeMade put his car on the tow truck before taking the green flag for the final time around, 29th. 5 laps down. Gazzo, 30th. The rest of the field, Munoz, Goodman, Anzaldo, Teed, Hawkins III, Wood, Musselman, Gion, and Carter for official drivers, and Tyler Graf was in race control tonight. I'd like to take the time to remind you once more that the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX. HyperX post-race show. The makers of premier gaming gear like luxury ultra-comfortable cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows for all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. And again, results currently unofficial, but right now, the driver who is, for now, standing in HyperX victory lane is Andrew Wood. Simple question. What happened on the final restart, Andrew?
Yeah, so basically I can't chalk it down to anything else other than I was nervous because I was doing a fuel save for the whole race. Didn't really know how the car was going to react on the restart, so I wanted to try and go really early to make sure that I had the run that I had to try and get ahead of the pack. I pushed the throttle and looked over and I saw that the pace car was still on the track, and I know that you get a penalty for that, for jumping the black flag, so I instinctively panicked and just came off the throttle, and like this instant that I panicked, I got back on it again, and unfortunately it just wasn't enough. And yeah, I know these things happen because it happens in all the other servers that you're in, so yeah, I take full responsibility. I'm not even really happy about how that race finished at all, so we'll see what happens. If it was, my fault and such, I apologize to everyone that was involved in any sort of wreck that happened behind me. But yeah, that's some pretty poor showing from my part to try and fool everyone to thinking that I was going.
And again, a tough situation for those involved, and it's worth noting too, though, to get yourself in the position to be that control car in the first place, it took a lot of fuel saving. One caution prior to that big one in turn 1 with under 10 to go. How tight was the margin to make it there, with you running about upwards of half a second sort of in the normal race pace prior to that point, with so many drivers and so many strategies?
It was very close for me. I was trending towards making it when I had cars ahead of me that I could save fuel off of. Once Isaiah pit, and I believe it was Taylor that pit, I was starting to burn a little bit more, and I was kind of trending in a different direction, and I wasn't really sure if I was going to make it or not, but I knew that the other cars that were on the same strategy were well in the back, so I just kind of was buying my time, sitting behind other cars, letting lap cars get by as best as possible, and I think I was going to make it. If anything, I was going to be coughing across the line, and in that case, I just really do a hard save on the last lap or two and see what the gaps were behind me. So, yeah, it was very, very close, and I didn't think at the end of the second stint that I was going to make it, but I'm pretty sure I was going to.
So either way, lots of experience for you entering this season. Of course, a Lionheart rookie for Speedway Series competition. Third race of the season, though, brings a bit of different type of racing. Your opinion on the next stop, which involves Milwaukee Mile, I believe.
Did you say Milwaukee Mile?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, short tracks are kind of my specialty. This type of circuit, Texas, is not really kind of suited to my style of racing. Just the imminent danger that you kind of go through all race long. It was very lucky for me to be up front in qualifying based on how I qualified last week. It could have been something similar to that and find myself in some more trouble. But I was very happy to be qualified where I was. Next week for Milwaukee, or next race at Milwaukee, it'll be interesting for sure. I'm not really sure how this car drives on the short ovals compared to my experience. I haven't really taken the car out there yet, so we'll take it as it comes. I think it'll be a good race for me.
By the way, just got official word. Results stand. Penalties will be for post-race. That means you are officially a Lionheart Speedway Series winner. Congratulations, Andrew.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks. We'll see what happens from then on.
Andrew Wood, first across the line tonight. Second across the line, Jacob Oster. And Jacob, how does it feel to be on the podium in Lionheart sanctioned competition?
Honestly, about 15 minutes ago, I was just gonna take the top 10 or not run out of fuel because we were cutting it really, really close because I just couldn't get in the pack and save a lot. But it's nice to get one of these because I feel like last week I really could have won the race. I felt really confident to be taking out how I was last week, and then come back here just to do this well. It's really, really nice.
And of course, one of the major things that we talked about tonight was around those first pit stops, a driver that you worked with a lot at Homestead Miami on the spotter stand joined you once more here at Texas. The race winner last season in the inaugural campaign, that being Alexis Newsom. How big was that support from her throughout the night tonight, knowing some of that experience with the fuel saving to make it to the end like last year?
It was incredible. She's really, really good at calculating fuel saving, as you've seen last year, and she helped me get my number every single lap and tell me if I was above or under, if I could push a little bit. And it really helped because I screwed up the first step by not saving at all, and it put me in a really, really tricky spot to where I had to save perfectly to make it to the end with no caution. And we got lucky there at the end, but she helped me really get that number down and know I would make it, because if she wouldn't have been there, I would have pit with like on lap 115 or something and just finished like P10, which wouldn't have been fun. So I got a P2 out of it, and I'm really glad she came and helped because that helped a lot.
So next month brings a bevy of different tracks. You have short track action, tracks such as Milwaukee Mile, as talked about, Atlanta amongst those who have seen in pre-race. You also have tracks like Pocono in the mix potentially as well to think about. What's it going to take for you to take a checkered flag at one of those tracks next month?
Well, I really like Milwaukee. Whenever we ran Indy Elite there a couple weeks ago, I felt really, really confident, and I feel like it can translate well to the DW12 because I have a lot of teammates where I'm in the DW12 a lot, and they can give me a lot of good pointers in Milwaukee and even at Pocono, and I love Pocono. And doing 120 laps of Pocono sounds like an absolute joy, and I can't wait for that. That would be a lot of fun.
Well, congratulations on the second step of the podium. Second spot, your highest finish in the season so far.
Right, thank you.
Jacob Oster finishes in second. Jim Herrick, you hear him a bit there. He's very happy. He started third, was as far back as the mid-20s, and comes back to finish in third. Jim, how was your roller coaster tonight in Texas?
Oh my gosh, I can't even describe. I mean, I was way further back than 23rd because I disconnected before I could grid, so I qualified third, but I started from pit lane. And I guess that kind of worked out to my benefit because I was able to do that early pit on the first caution, which ended up getting me to the end on pit sequences where a lot of guys were stopping for that splash at the end. So I guess sometimes there's a silver lining and things like that, and today was one of them.
And there was the saying last time out when it came to your team name, 4D Sim Racing, in the 4D chess played by Craig Forsyth. What was kind of the chess match like for you in your head when you realized, okay, we're several laps down possibly here, if not at risk of losing a lap? What was that like trying to figure out what moves you needed to make to get yourself to this spot?
Well, for me, it was mostly, after the disconnect and starting from pit lane, I just wanted to avoid any major incidents and try and conserve a little fuel at the back and see if I could run a lap or two longer than the guys in front of me. And fortunately, I still had that number 3 pit stall, which didn't hurt me at all in the pit stops. So there wasn't really too much strategy. I had to just take what was given to me and take the spots I could get on track and try and stay out of trouble.
So, of course, you're one of the rookies coming into this season trying to make a name for themselves in Lionheart sanctioned competition. Where do you feel we should see you back in contention throughout this season, especially with 3 different types of tracks next month alone?
Yeah, you summed it all up there when you said I was a rookie. I'm pretty green still in iRacing overall, and I try to race hard and do my best. I try to put in a lot of practice that keeps me on top of my game. But there's a lot of very talented drivers in this league, and I don't want to speculate on where I rank myself amongst those guys. There's some really good guys here that have been doing this for a lot more years than I have. So I'm just happy to be able to, get the 4D Racewear car up there on the podium and, have some fun, and we'll see where we are later in the season.
Going to be interesting to say at the very least how you perform. Congrats, though, on the podium, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's Jim Herrick rounding out the top 3 tonight. I'd like to thank him, Jacob Oster, and Andrew Wood for joining us from HyperX Victory Lane. Let's take a look at the schedule presented by Next Level Racing. And as talked about, Milwaukee, Pocono, a Triple Crown race, Atlanta in the month of April. Worth noting when it comes to Jim Herrick, the one major league victory he had just happened to be at Atlanta in a series that features drivers such as Matt Wagner. But it's Milwaukee up next, Andrew. Your thoughts on the Milwaukee Mile?
Yeah, Milwaukee is one of my favorite short tracks. It's really one of those tracks that it requires a strong driver in order to succeed here. You really have to use both, not just your steering wheel, but also the pedals as well. Especially that brake pedal will actually probably come into play on these setups to quite a large extent. Hopefully we'll see some nice side-by-side racing, and it should be another good race, and hopefully we'll have a nice clean one.
It's going to be an intriguing one for the Milwaukee Mile again. That's April 4th. Be sure to tune in. Starts at approximately 10:05 p.m. Eastern on RaceSpot and ESTV. But with that, we'd like to thank you for tuning into tonight's action as well. Thank the sponsors who help make things run smoothly for Lionheart. First, the official sponsor for the Speedway series, Moza Racing. Moza Racing is revolutionizing sim racing with the development of industry-leading hardware and software products like their R9 direct drive wheelbase and GS steering wheel. Featuring zero-delay wireless technology and made from high-end materials, Moza Racing delivers the precision you need to reach victory lane. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information, visit hyperx.com. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now, you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt kicker, haptic hardware and software, easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine red line. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit www.nextlevelracing.com. Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls. Precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today, passionate and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, Creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. And it's not just those names, but many more that bring everything to fruition when it comes to Lionheart Racing Series competition. For more information, including about the presenting sponsors and those who help support Lionheart action, visit LionheartRacingSeries.com. You can also find out more information on the 3 competitions Lionheart sanctioning body has held this year. Lots more Lionheart competition is to come. Be sure to follow along with the action on social media, whether on Lionheart Series or through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and more. RaceTV and RaceSpot. Be sure to hit the YouTube subscribe button and the notification bell as well. Keep up with the sim racing action we get to cover. The next time the Lionheart Racing Series hits the track is just in a couple days' time, because it'll be a trip to Long Beach for the Lionheart IndyCar Series. Be sure to tune in once more. Coverage starts 10:05 p.m. Eastern Time on March the 23rd. The next time the Speedway Series as mentioned goes on the track will be in April at the Milwaukee Mile. That coverage will also start at 10:05 p.m. Eastern. That is 7:05 Pacific. But until then, it's time to say goodbye. For producer Juna Kankipati, or my co-announcer Andrew Kinsella, my name is Justin Prince. Thank you so much for watching tonight's action on RaceSpotTV and ESTV from Texas Motor Speedway. Congratulations once again to tonight's race winner, that being Andrew Wood. He's your winner of the SimRace247 Texas 200, presented by Gomez Sim Industries.